I think it was really the journey of the poetry that is the making of the film. From the moment that character started taking form in my head,
Mm,
and I started looking around. I
mm,
felt maybe only this. I mean, the image I saw of Rekha here and there, I thought this is the only person who can do it. For me, the Umrao Jaan, that was one journey. I was telling the journey of poetry. The other journey is the journey of textiles. Maybe I could have found another poet, but uh, he was really a big asset for this movie. These were all thinking artists which were free from the trap of the conventional Bollywood
mm.
thought process.
So, good afternoon. This is
I,
Sarika Sharma, editor Entertainment Money Control. And congrats for the re-release of Umrao Jaan. It's been a cult movie, sir. So, you know, how does it feel that it's releasing for a very new generation, a very different generation from when it was originally released in 1981?
I think I would say there will be some kind of a continuity of emotion in the audience. It's some kind of a nostalgia, some kind of a. I mean, also it's going into some unknown zones. Also, people
Mm-hmm.
who've never heard of this before. So I don't know. I'm also quite you know expectant to see how it's going to people are going to react. But it'll be either something very, very unusual and different that will happen,
Mm-hmm.
or something very predictable, which is I don't know. I can't say anything how it'll pan out. Bec-
Because
Because
we've watched the movie,
it's something that people have seen also,
Anji.
and also it's something that a lot of people haven't seen. So between the seen and the unseen, there's a connect of their own family. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm sure it'll be good because it's going to be in a restored format. It'll be
Yes, sir.
very high-tech sound, good,
Mm-hmm.
better viewing conditions and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then maybe after that, it'll have a very strong OTT impact when it reaches your home. So that because it's not gone still to be
Yes.
home. So that way I'm quite eager to see how things are going to pan out.
And so, newer generation, I mean, the songs have always been the heart of the movie.
I
So,
think the
what do you
songs
see?
have been a kind of a continuity link with the past and the present and what's going to come out now. People are Their songs will bring a lot of nostalgia back.
Mm. And sir, also, I mean, talking about it, how it was made at that point of time, how did you conceptualize it in back in 1981 when you had everything in mind when you started shooting it and it got released?
Basically, I looked at it as a musical. I mean,
Mm,
I looked at it as a kind of a poetic musical, which has the character flowing through. I mean, the story was there. It was a very simple story of a girl being abducted
mm,
and then going back to her home and not being
yeah.
abducted, and whatever happens in between. So I had to create poetry for that. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So the creation of the poetic structure of the film was the main authorship of the film. You know what I mean?
yes, sir.
To get into the psyche through poetry.
Mm-hmm,
Because I didn't want to use her own poetry because I thought that poetry was too long-winded and too off the mark and too differently oriented. So we first thing was to create poetry that would
mm-hmm,
tell the story of her life.
mm,
And fortunately, I had just worked with Shahryar. I used his ghazals in Gaman.
Mm,
Found a great resonance with his way of expressing. I mean, he had a certain sense of classicism, modernity.
mm,
Modern poet. I mean, so I wanted to use a modern poetic language to tell a classic tale. You know what I mean? So
mm,
I worked backwards from one line that I liked of his,
sure.
and then I
Mm,
started structuring the whole thing on
mm,
that basis. That line was, "ये क्या जगह है दोस्तों, ये कौन सा दयार है."
uh,
So that was my kind of standpoint. I mean, वहीं से हमने पूरा एक poetic journey शुरू की and
mm,
brought it to इन आंखों की मस्ती के मस्ताने हजारों हैं, दिल चीज क्या है आप मेरी जान लीजिए. So this we wove all this poetry through that kind of a position. That somebody reaches here, what would have been the first step to reach there? You know what I mean?
mm,
So that was the. I think it was really the journey of the poetry that is the making of the film.
yeah.
And if I hadn't found Shahryar, I would have. I don't know what I could have done. I could have found another poet, but uh, he was really a big asset for this movie.
So Rekha, I mean,
No, no. I mean, this is just preparing for Rekha. These are the layers of
okay,
which Rekha is going to be born. And then Rekha is not born out of thin air.
okay.
She's born out of
Uh,
she's born out of music. She's
uh,
born out of I mean poetry, and the music also born out of they are soulful creations. You know what I mean?
mm,
So
yeah.
there to go into music was the next main thing.
Mm,
And the music it had to belong to Lucknow.
mm,
I mean, the challenge was this: how true can I be to Lucknow?
mm,
The resonance of a sculpture, a city which has been part of my growing up, my bloodstream.
mm,
If I'm not faithful to that,
mm,
and I'm not creative about that,
mm,
then Lucknow has already been treated by many filmmakers
mm,
in Bollywood. And it's not Lucknow to me.
mm,
So mm, that way, then finally coming to the dance, which was Kumudni Lakhia. She's from the Lucknow Gharana, and she had
sure.
again, I think the modernity of art has been my main thrust, because
Mm,
she's also very modern. It was a very modern dance mind. You know what I mean?
mm,
She could think out of the box. She
mm,
could think simply. She could think very kind of artistically, organically about evolution of a character. I mean, these were all thinking artists which were free from the trap of the conventional Bollywood
mm.
thought process.
Ah, okay.
So then, when it comes to Rekha,
Mm,
then add the final layer of her immersion and performance and the textile language and everything else, then the flight is ready for a full-fledged takeoff. There's no looking back. You know what I mean?
mm. So Amiran was always Rekha for you.
Uh-huh.
Umrao Jaan. Umrao Jaan was always Rekha for you. I mean, did you
Yeah,
conceptualized it?
from the moment that character started uh, taking form in my head,
Mm,
and I started looking around. I
mm,
felt maybe only this. I mean, the image I saw of Rekha here and there, I thought this is the only person who can do it.
yeah. So you've also mentioned about a book release with the film book Umrao Jaan
Yeah,
and featuring those 250 photographs of the movie.
that
So
book is a
just
joy.
give us a brief on that. Also.
Book is here. It's
Yeah,
a
I
huge
just saw the picture.
3 kilo book, and it's got a lot of beautiful spreads and pictures of
Mm,
behind the camera and also from the frame, grabs from the frame, and then a lot of interesting people have written about it, and so it's like a film in a film, It's like seeing a film is seen from many angles,
mm,
of the camera, So this is
mm.
also seen from many minds.
Yeah.
Many minds have
So, yeah,
come together uh, to describe the experience of Umrao Jaan.
yeah. And so your House of Kotwara that you founded with the labels that you founded, and how did you go about that? It all, the traditional crafts of ours are also restored in that, and you.
See, the point is the languages I learned from making a film.
Mm,
One of the biggest languages was the language of textiles and craft.
mm,
I think there's one language which is uh, hugely ignored in Indian cinema.
mm,
People go off the mark, off the target, off over the top. They just
mm,
don't hit it right. You know what I mean?
mm, mm.
Don't know how much uh, a garment has to be worn
Yeah,
to be a testimony of the truth that the character is going to bring forth. You know what I mean?
bring.
People just everything is not off the shelf. You know what I mean? Everything is or has to be uh, felt and dreamt and authenticated and tactile. So all that kind of an experience. For me, the Umrao Jaan, that was one journey. I was telling the journey of poetry. The other journey is the journey of textiles.
Textile, yes, right.
And textiles and craft have really given me my way of looking at the world. You know what I mean? So I found Kotwara, where I come from,
Mm-hmm.
a place which is like it's my eternal muse. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
In fact, when I was making Gaman, Smita said, "आप इतना सोचते हैं इसके बारे में, why didn't you do something here?"
Mm,
I said, I'm working with Air India. How can I just leave? And I've not even got into films properly.
mm,
So Kotwara was just like a kind of tended idea. So
mm,
when then now 1990 when my father passed away,
mm-hmm.
Meera and myself we and this my film Zuni got stopped.
Ah,
So we headed towards Kotwara to set things right. And then I found craft a very, very inspiring way out for them, because it would empower women, it would give them a new way of looking at life and all that. And the women took to craft like fish to water. So
mm,
craft became our passion, and now it's like you can do and you can imagine any textile and it can happen there, you know what I mean? So
mm,
that way it's a Kotwara has been it's not a brand or anything like that. It's more
mm,
of a uh, it's a definition of style, you know what I mean?
mm.
A way of life, and it's got its own challenges and responsibilities. And I think they're very beautiful challenges. And my daughter now also is taking interest in that.
Yes, yes, that is.
So it's really it's a way of making people look beautiful.
Wow. And so, Umrao Jaan, if I were to ask you that if it's remade, it was remade once, what was your reaction to that? And if it's ever remade?
नहीं अभी तो I had no reaction to that, because I had already made the film, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so yeah.
And I had made it for people.
Uh,
So it was already sitting in people's hearts.
uh,
So there was, if anybody had to protect to prevent that film, was
mm,
people themselves. And a lot
mm,
of people didn't want their heart to be diluted with something else.
mm, mm, mm,
So
mm,
people resisted it on their own, without my wanting to say it. I think
yeah.
some classics, if they are to be remade,
Mm,
needs a very deep, very strong reason. You know what I mean?
mm, mm,
It has to be very, very strong.
Yeah.
only then the audience will accept the remake, you know.
So if you, I mean, if we've watched Umrao Jaan and we've seen the color of the skin when Amiran says कि मेरी जगह तुम होती ना, ये वो वाला हिस्सा था ना जिसमें कि अमीरन को लगता है कि मेरा स्किन कलर की वजह से शायद मैं यहाँ उमराव जान है और वो वहाँ है. So, do you think that the skin color played made you choose Rekha, or was it just that?
I think the skin color.
है ना? I mean, because you have that line also in the movie, na, where you
Skin
say na
color,
कि,
yeah.
ना,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think dark people tell deeper stories, you know.
yeah. Because like me also, I mean, I'm on the darker side, so we feel a bit conscious also at times, है ना? तो
Yeah.
लगता है कि कुछ चीजों से डिप्राइव हो जाते हैं.
नहीं नहीं वो तो but as an artist you don't. Have you
हाँ,
seen
of course.
people like Morgan Freeman or Denzel Washington and all these people can do
हाँ, बिल्कुल
तो
बिल्कुल.
पर्दा फाड़ देते हैं.
हाँ, बिल्कुल ये बात तो है. और सर फारूक शेख अगर हम बात करें उनकी, आई मीन, how did you have two different kind of like Raj Babbar Sahab and Farooq Sheikh for the first and the
I think
second.
all the three people, Raj Babbar, Nasiruddin Shah, and Farooq. Farooq
Mm.
is something superb. You know, I don't think you can
Mm.
get any kind of a sweet dish sweeter than that. You know? He's too good. I mean, what he did for the film.
Mm.
I mean, he just didn't disturb anything, and he did everything. You know, I mean, otherwise, you know, it's very difficult for a man to contain himself
Mm.
within the physicality of being a man. You know what I mean? They become aggressive.
Mm.
They think you know. But he was very gentle, very suave. He was like a organic next step from the taxi driver of Gaman. You know,
हाँ.
and he was very vulnerable, windblown. You know, that vulnerability that he brings to the character, nobody has been able to do that. You know? Everybody's trying to overstate, you know what I mean? He doesn't.
So songs, instead of गानों की आपने you've spoken about it, but then खयाम साहब का music भी, how did that
I think
thing
I
happen? मतलब
live in,
everything felt perfect in
and
that movie, you know?
Khayyam Saab also lives, used to live opposite here, not too far. And
अच्छा.
then Shahriyar used to stay in the house.
हाँ.
So it became a trio which just gelled and vibed for about a year before something substantial and memorable could come out. You know what I mean? It's not done overnight, you know.
हम्म.
I can't do it alone. Khayyam
हम्म.
Saab can't do it.
हाँ.
Shahriyar can't do it.
हाँ,
So
बिल्कुल.
we have done it together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is a big thing, you know.
And sir, do you feel कि अभी मूवी रिलीज हो रहा है and there could be like, जैसे आपने शुरू में बोला कि मूवी बहुत पसंद आएगी या कैसे, बिकॉज यू नो आजकल क्या है, फास्ट पेस वर्ल्ड हो गया एकदम. तो आपको क्या लगता है ये मूवी के बारे में? मतलब वी लव्ड इट ऑब्वियसली
क्या बता
जेन्स के
आप
ऊपर.
बताइए. अब फास्ट पेस
हमें तो पता है,
तो
हमें
होता है,
देखनी है.
लेकिन लोग
दोबारा.
जब आने से पहले ट्रैफिक जैम में होंगे, आने के बाद ट्रैफिक जैम में होंगे, फिर स्लो हो जाएंगे ना. तो फिल्में भी आके स्लो हो जाइए थोड़ा सा.
हाँ, बिल्कुल सही.
दुनिया तो बाहर से तो स्लो हो गई ना, अंदर से
हाँ,
कुछ भी हो. अब
क्योंकि ये ओटीटी वर्ल्ड की वजह से, एंड आपकी मूवी
नहीं
कभी
नहीं
भी
बट आई
ओटीटी
मीन
पे
जस्ट
नहीं
सी
आई.
द ट्रैफिक, यू इट टेक्स 1.5 घंटा 2 घंटा से पहले तो आप कहीं पहुंच नहीं पाती. तो व्हाट इज द
हाँ.
बिग आइडिया ऑफ फास्ट पेस्ड. पहले ज्यादा जल्दी पहुंच जाते थे.
हाँ, ट्रैफिक भी नहीं होता था, या. बट इट्स रियली नाइस, मतलब आई सो वांटेड टू इंटरव्यू यू सर. थैंक यू सो मच, ऑल द बेस्ट.
थैंक
होप
यू.
ट्रैफिक जाम ना रहे और फटाफट
नहीं नहीं
पहुंच
वो
जाए
तो नहीं
मूवी.
रहेगा. मैं तो ऐसे ही मुहावरन कह रहा था.
हाँ जी, थैंक यू सो मच, थैंक यू.